Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress by Dai C.G. Part 1, Chapter 5. We opted for the story of The Little Flower Seller. By now, we had seen 3 films at the basketball court in Yongjing. By far, the most popular was a North Korean melodrama with a heroine called The Flower Girl. We had already told the story in our village, and when we came to the end of the performance, I imitated the sentimental, throaty voiceover I had heard in town. The saying goes, a sincere heart can make even a stone blossom. So tell me, was the flower girl's heart lacking in sincerity? The effect had been as grandiose as that of the screen version. The whole audience wept. Even the village headman, who, for all his harshness, couldn't hold back the tears pouring hotly from his left eye, marked as ever by 3 spots of blood. Although Luo was suffering from recurrent bouts of fever, he claimed he was well enough for us to undertake the journey to the village where the little seamstress lived. He set off with the confident air of a conqueror. However, he was struck down by another attack of malaria on the way. Although the sun was shining brightly, he said he could feel the cold creeping up on him. I managed to light a fire with some twigs and dead leaves and made him sit next to me, but instead of warming up, he felt colder than ever. "Let's press on," he said, struggling to his feet. His teeth were chattering. All along the pathway we could hear the rush of a mountain torrent as the cries of monkeys and other wild creatures. Luo was alternately excruciatingly cold and unbearably hot. Now and then he would teeter so close to the edge of the precipice that he dislodged stones and clods of earth. The sounds of them hitting the bottom of the ravine took an eternity to reach our ears. At such times I would persuade him to rest a while, until the fever subsided. Upon arriving at the little seamstress's home, we were pleased to learn that her father was on one of his trips. Like the first time, the black dog came to snuffle at our legs but did not bark. Luo's face was flushed a deep crimson. He was delirious. The little seamstress was shocked to see the ravages wrought by his fevers. She promptly canceled the oral cinema show and installed Luo in her room, on her bed, under a white mosquito net. She rolled her long pigtail into a high chignon on the top of her head. Then she took off her pink shoes and ran outside, barefoot. "Why don't you come along?" she called out to me. "I know a very good remedy for him." It was a common plant growing on the banks of the little stream not far from our village. Bushy, barely 30 centimeters high, it had bright pink flowers with petals resembling an outside peach blossom, which were reflected in the limpid, shallow water of the stream. The medicinal properties were concentrated in the angular, spiky leaves shaped like duck's feet, of which the little seamstress gathered large quantities. "What's the name of this plant?" I asked her. "It's called broken bowl shards." She pounded the leaves in a white stone mortar until they were reduced to a thick greenish paste, which she proceeded to smear on Luo's left wrist. Although still feverish, he had recovered a certain rationality and willingly let her apply the poultice. She bound it up with a long strip of white linen. Towards nightfall, Luo's breathing calmed somewhat, and he fell asleep. "Do you believe in that sort of thing?" the little seamstress asked in a hesitant voice. "What sort of thing?" "Things you can't explain naturally." "Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't." "You sound as if you think I'll denounce you." "Not at all." "Well?" "In my opinion, you can't believe in them totally, but you can't deny them totally either." She seemed to approve of my answer. Glancing at Luo asleep on her bed, she asked, "What is Luo's father? A Buddhist I don't know, but he's a famous dentist. What's a dentist? Don't you know what a dentist is? Dentists take care of your teeth. Really? You mean to say that they can kill the worms that get into your teeth and make them ache? That's right, I replied without laughing. I'll tell you a secret, but you must swear you'll never tell another soul. I swear. His father, I said, lowering my voice, got rid of all the worms in Chairman Mao's teeth. After a moment's respectful silence, she asked, if I got the sorceress to come and keep a vigil by his son's sick bed tonight, would he mind? Towards midnight, 4 old crones arrived from 3 different villages. They were trailing robes of black and blue, flowers in their hair and jade bracelets on their wrists. The sorceresses huddled over Luo, who was twitching in his sleep. Then they settled down at the 4 corners of the bed and eyed him through the mosquito net. It was hard to say which of them was the most ugly and likely to frighten off evil spirits. One of the sorceresses, the most shriveled of all, held a bow and arrow in her hands. I can guarantee, she said to me, that the evil spirit of the little coal mine, the one who's been plaguing your friend here, won't dare to come tonight. My bow is from Tibet, and my arrow is tipped with silver. When I shoot my arrow, it whistles in the air like a flying flute, and never fails to pierce the breast of demons, however powerful they may be. Not only were the sorceresses very old, it was also very late, and after a while they began to yawn, and despite the strong tea our hostess plied them with, they nodded off, one after the other. The owner of the bow, too, succumbed to sleep. She laid the weapon on the bed, and her slack, painted lids drooped heavily and closed. Wake them up, the little seamstress said to me. Tell them a film. What kind? Doesn't matter, just keep them awake. So I embarked on the strangest performance of my life. In that remote village, tucked into a cleft in the mountain where my friend had fallen into a sort of stupor, I sat in the flickering light of an oil lamp and related the North Korean film for the benefit of a pretty girl and 4 ancient sorceresses. I got along on my own as best I could. After a few minutes, the audience was captivated by the story of the poor flower girl. They even asked questions, and the longer I spoke, the less they had to blink their eyes to stay awake. Still, the magic was not the same as when Luo took the lead. I was not a born storyteller. We were different. Half an hour into the story, the flower girl, having gone to extreme lengths to get some money, rushes to the hospital only to find that she is too late. Her mother has died, calling desperately for her daughter in her last breath. A propaganda film like any other. Normally speaking, the deathbed scene marked the first high point in the story. The audience would always weep at this moment, regardless of whether they were watching the film or listening to our version of it. Perhaps the sorceresses were made of different stuff. They listened attentively with some degree of engagement. I could even sense a slight frisson of emotion, but no tears were shed. Disappointment by the effect of my performance, I dwelt on the description of the flower girl's uncontrollably shaking hand and the bank note slipping from her fingers. But the sorceresses were unimpressed. Suddenly, from inside the white mosquito net, came a voice that sounded as if it issued from the bottom of a well. The saying goes, Luo intoned, that a sincere heart can make a stone blossom. So tell me, was the flower girl's heart lacking in sincerity? I was struck more by the fact that Luo had uttered the resounding finale before the story had ended than by his sudden awakening. But what a surprise when I glanced around the room. The four sorceresses were weeping. Their tears spurted forth generously and coursed down their warped, fissured cheeks. How great Luo's talent was! He was able to electrify an audience by means of a perfectly timed voiceover, even when overcome by a violent bout of malaria. As I continued with the story, I had the impression there was something different about the little seamstress, and I realized that her hair was hanging loose in luxuriant tresses, a wonderful mane cascading over her shoulders. I guessed that Luo must have reached out of the mosquito net and untied her long pigtail with his feverish fingers. A sudden draught made the lamp sputter and die, and in that moment I thought I saw the little seamstress lift one corner of the net and bend over Luo in the dark for a furtive kiss. One of the sorceresses relit the oil lamp, and I went on to tell the rest of the Korean girl's sad story. The sorceresses wept profusely, their tears mingling with the phlegm running from their nostrils, and their snuffling continued until deep into the night.